In this video, we're going to learn a little bit about joints and different ways of manipulating these joints. So let's start out by learning how to draw joints. Obviously, joints are an integral part of setting up your rigs. These joints are going to be controlled by your control curves, and they in turn will control the geometry. So we need to learn how to create joints. Okay, so to do that, make sure that you are in the rigging drop down menu in 2016. In 2015, it's the animation drop down menu. So we're going to go to skeleton, create joints. And remember the rule that you are supposed to be following when you're drawing anything in Maya. And the rule is to not draw anything in the perspective view. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of place myself in the side view for now. And just go ahead and click, 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 and click. Just change the background, trying to figure out which one's the best. I think we were pretty good with this. Okay, so let me try that again. Skeleton, let's create a thigh, and a knee, and an ankle, and a toe, if you will. Okay, so just press enter when I'm done creating joints. So what is happening when you're creating joints? Now this is really interesting. Take a look at this right here. I've got my joint selected. This is this joint. This is my knee. And here's my ankle. And here's my joint. So as I'm going from the thigh to the knee to the ankle to the toe, really I'm creating a child joint and a grandchild joint and a grand-grandchild joint. So basically a joint chain is nothing but a family of joints. That's what it is. Okay, of course you'll rename joints and stuff like that, and we'll get into the habit of doing that as we start putting up our rig. But before that, let's quickly learn about two different ways in which animators will like to manipulate this joint chain. So I'm going to duplicate this and move this to the side. So we have two separate legs to work with. Now ideally, animators would like to animate this particular leg setup in two different ways. The first setup is called as the FK setup. FK stands for forward, with the right spelling, if I could. Still no. Forward kinematics. Can't believe I had such a tough time with the word forward, but I got kinematics right the first go. Anyways, if you're wondering what kinematics is and whether it's going to be another technical term that you have to remember, just know that the term forward is much more important. So we're going to come to that in a second. I'm going to explain to you why FK is forward kinematics. But remember that FK is normally used for curvy rotational motion. Okay, so now let's think about your arms. I want you to create some sort of a motion where you're flying. Okay, do like a flying action. Okay, now if you look at the joints of your arms, they're actually rotating. Nothing is in a straight line. Everything is creating curves, and that is an example of a curvy rotational motion. Swimming, running for your arms is once again a curvy rotational motion. Anything where the wrist isn't constrained particularly to something, or it isn't moving in a straight line, it's curvy rotational free motion. Okay, and in fact I'm going to add that in here. It's curvy rotational free motion. Okay, and so the way that works is if I was to make curvy, just gonna hide that, rotational motion here, I'm going to start out by selecting the thigh and I'm going to rotate it. And you see, obviously, when I rotate the thigh, all the children joints basically rotate with it. So rotation of the parent joint rotates the child and the grandchild and the grand-grandchild. Rotating the knee will rotate the ankle and the toe. Rotating the knee, the ankle is going to rotate the toe with it. Just like we expected. Thigh controls knee, controls ankle, controls toe. Okay, and because this order is so much simpler and exactly how we expected it to be, the control is set to go in the forward direction, and hence we call this forward kinematics. Okay, that is fantastic. Okay, let me go ahead and set a key on all of this. 2, 3. Let me go up here. Then I rotate, start with the thigh, then the knee, and then the ankle. 2, 3, key it, and that is my rotational motion. So that is FK, if you will. Okay, where motion's rotational, parents are normally controlling the children just as they should. Now, let's look at the next kind of mode of manipulation for these joints. Okay, the second kind of mode of manipulation is called as IK. It stands for inverse kinematics, and it is normally used for linear translational restricted motion. Okay, so linear translational restricted motion. What does that mean, and what is the example of it? It's really simple. Okay, imagine you're holding a knife and you're stabbing something by moving your wrist in a straight line away from you. That is a linear motion. Okay, imagine you're a boxer and you're doing quick jabs, jab, 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 jab. That is an IK motion for the arm. Now imagine you're doing a big, let's say, what other examples can I think of? Climbing the rope. So think about your character climbing the rope. The relative motion of your wrist is almost in a straight line, if you think about it. Also, the movement of the wrist is restricted to that of the rope. So for the arms, that is also an IK motion. So I want you guys to be able to differentiate between FK and IK motions, and if you have any questions, let me know, of course. Okay, but to make, in this particular case, if I was to lift the leg up, lift the ankle up straight, then that would be an IK motion. Now, how do you make something like that happen? Obviously, rotating this and then making sure that this is down here seems like a lot of work, a lot of animation and counter animation. So, what we do instead is we click on skeleton, we click on create IK handle, and then click on the thigh and click on the ankle. Okay, and now we have something called as an IK handle that we have installed, which allows us to basically select the IK handle, pull it up, and you see what we have here is we can simply just move the ankle up in a straight line, which is fantastic. Now I want you to try and analyze this particular motion. So what's going on here is that what I'm literally doing is dictating the position of the ankle, and the knee and the rotation of the thigh is kind of adjusting to it. Can you see it? This is almost like I'm dictating the ankle needs to be over here, and then I don't want you to worry about this. This is an issue with 2016. It's some sort of a visual bug, if you will. Okay. But anyways, the ankle is dictating the position of the knee and the rotation of the thigh. So what's happening here is that a child is dictating where the parent should be and the grandparent should be. Now the control seems to be going in the opposite direction as opposed to an FK where the parent dictates how the child moves and the child dictates how the grandchild moves. That happens here in the FK setup. In the IK setup, the control is in the opposite direction or the inverse direction, and hence the term inverse. Okay, so that's really all that there is to know. We're going to get into installation of IK handles and stuff like that in a second, but let me just zero everything out first. And there we go. Okay, so one thing to remember is that any given chain will either function as an FK chain or function as an IK chain, which means that once you install an IK handle, you're not going to be able to rotate those joints the way you want them to. Okay, so that is not possible at all, which means we have to then ask ourselves whether we should be going with an FK or an IK setup in particular situations. We'll talk about that once the rig starts to come together. But here's a quick little lesson to learn. When you create joints in the default, which means that you're drawing out a joint chain, by default that joint chain is in the FK state. So as soon as you've drawn a joint chain, it is in its FK state. You cannot draw IK joint chains. You have to start out by drawing an FK chain and then converting that FK chain into an IK chain by installing an IK handle. That's how I like to think about it. So I'm going to install an IK handle and let's get into the details of that. Maya offers different kinds of IK handles for us to use. Okay, we are going to study, let me get rid of maybe one of these. We are going to study 3 different IK handle types. Okay, so let's start out by going into skeleton, say create IK handle, and go into the option box. Okay, the first kind of IK handle that I want us to learn is called as the rotate plane solver. Just make sure your sticky is checked. Okay, click on the thigh and click on the ankle. And the way this works is I should be able to pick up the IK handle, stretch out the leg all the way. When I bend it back in, it once again bends in the same direction. You see that? That's interesting. This IK handle does not allow me to bend my bend my joint chain in the opposite direction. So this is ideal for something like an arm setup or a leg setup. Just fantastic. Okay. Also, when I select the IK handle in the channel box, I should be able to see an attribute called as twist, which I can select and mess with. So not only am I able to bend my chain in one direction, it also allows me to twist my chain, which is fantastic. Okay, so as I said, this IK handle is perfect for a leg setup or an arm setup. Let me get rid of that and show you the next kind of IK handle. I'm going to replace my rotate plane solver with single chain and install it exactly the same way. Now this IK handle allows me once again to bend my chain only in one direction, but it has a dysfunctional twist. When I try to twist it, you see that my chain does not twist. So that's the only difference between a single chain and a rotate plane IK handle. By the way, single chain IK handles are called as SC IK handles. Rotate plane IK handles are called as RP IK handles. Okay, so the difference between RP and an SC is the fact that your SC has a dysfunctional twist. Now one may ask, why do we need to have 2 different IK handles if the difference is so little? And the answer is very simple. Fewer working parameters means calculating this particular IK handle is going to take Maya less effort. So this is an easier relationship for Maya to work with, and that's why if you know that there isn't going to be any twisting, you could simply go with the SCIK handle over the RPIK handle. So those are 2 different kinds of IK handles which are fairly alike. One of the limitations of this IK handle is that it does not allow me to bend my IK handle or bend my joint chain in the opposite direction. And it works fine for something like a leg maybe, not the SC. Let me just go back to an RP. It's my RP IK handle. So yeah, this type of IK handle works fine for a leg, which kind of bends theoretically only in one direction. However, if I was to install something like this for the spine, I knew that I would run into lots of issues because the spine doesn't just bend in one direction. The spine bends in all possible directions. It's very dynamic, it's very fluid. So for that purpose, especially when we want our joints to bend in all possible directions, maybe like a fish or a giraffe's neck, we are not going to be using SC or RP IK handle. We're going to use something called as the spline IK handle, which is a different kind of IK handle sitting right over here, the spline IK handle. So let me go ahead and open a new scene. I'm going to start out by creating a new joint chain, like a spine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, let's say. Okay, so keep a close eye on the outliner. I'm about to install the IK handle, spline IK handle if you will. I'm going to start from the bottom and then click on the child. And not only do I have an IK handle, but I also have a curve. And if you're wondering where the curve is, here's where it is. Maya's automatically created that curve. You're wondering, what does that curve do? We'll get to that, but let's start out by selecting the IK handle and trying to move it. You cannot move that IK handle. I'm trying to press W, I'm trying to press rotate, none of that is showing up. The manipulators won't show up. And that's because this is not how this IK handle works. The way this IK handle works is through manipulation of this curve. So, if I was to select the curve and press F9, it gives me access to 1, 2, 3, 4 points. I'm going to select one of them and get outside of my isolate select mode. I'm going to try and mess with it. You see what's happening? If I change the shape of that curve, the joint chain pretty much assumes that shape, it's following suit. So if I can find a way to manipulate my curve, the joint chain is pretty much going to just follow its shape. Now imagine using something like this for the spine of a fish or a human being, the neck of a giraffe, cords, tails, ropes, chains. Did I say chains already? That kind of stuff. That is pretty much the application of a spline IK handle. Remember, the joint chain follows the shape of the curve.